All right, what are controllers, why we need controllers, and what are the benefits of controllers? Okay, so first of all, we need to understand like the controllers are basically the essential part of MVC framework. All right, so what does MVC stand for? Model, view, and controller. Okay, controllers handles the logic of your application by receiving user input, interacting with the models. Like for example, we want to do some business logics with the models. Obviously we don't do that business logics in the models directly. We will follow some patterns for that, but that are on the later stages. But obviously for as of now, you need to understand like the controllers receive the user input, they displays the data, and then whatever you action you want to perform on the controller, they return some kind of response. Either it is in the form of view or in the form of JSON. All right, so that depends how you want to handle the controller. Obviously the controllers also handles the routing and requests, and obviously they contain functions. Those functions are obviously usable. We can also apply middlewares to the controllers and lots of things obviously. Okay, so enough done talking. Let's try to create our first controller. How we can create controller, and obviously we are not only going to learn how we can create controllers, we are also going to learn some very first command of our Laravel application. Okay, so as I am using the PHP strong, so it has a built-in terminal. You can obviously use and if you are using a VS Code, obviously that also has a built-in terminal as well. Other than that, you can use the cmd command. All right, so I will open the terminal here inside my PHP strong, and let's create a controller. So how we can create a controller? So PHP artisan make controller. All right, so this is basically the syntax. PHP artisan make controller is a command. All right, and then we give the name to the controller. So what type of controller do we need? What is the name of controller? So I will say home controller. All right, and I will click enter. Now the controller is created, and it is created inside our app http controllers and home directory, home controller. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at here. So we have app here, we have http here, we have controllers, and inside the controllers this is our home controller. All right, so what does it contains? By default, this class home controller extends the main controller. So basically this is a one-way inheritance, and we have the controller here which is basically doing all the stuff and all the programming. We really don't need to touch this controller class here, but obviously whatever we do, we will do inside our home controller. So it is using the namespace, and it is using this facade here. Obviously we have not touched that part right now just yet, but we will do cover those facades. What are facades and what are their benefits? We will obviously cover those side by side. When as the course will progress, we will learn most of the concepts within these topics. All right, so we have created a controller. Now what's next? The controllers contains functions. All right, so let's create a function, public function, and let's say index here. And the index, I want to return a view here. So we have created some views inside our resources, views, and we have created the index.blade.php. All right, so let's say I return a view, and the view name is basically inside. So we are now resources, views. So Laravel will detect automatically, like we are going to pass the view here, and this view exists inside this resources and views folder. So all we need to do is basically we need to pass in the name, and we really don't need to explain like index.blade.php because Laravel automatically detects that. Okay, now inside our web.php, apart from this, where we are returning the view here, let's call the function here and try to return this view here inside this from this index method. How we can do that? Let's actually remove this string from here, everything, and let's put the curly braces and type in our home controller. Okay, and also the class and then the method name. So we have the method name of index and the controller here. So now if I reload the page, I should still be able to see that variable. Okay, so now this is saying like we have the undefined variable of title. Why is that? Because we are not passing any title here. So let's pass that title here, and let's say it is welcome to controller, and second parameter would be compact title. If I reload, there we go, welcome to the controller. And obviously we can make it inside the h1 here. Reload the page, there we go. So now this is how we can create controllers and how we can point out our routes to the controller methods. And let's say, for example, I want to pass and I want to create another controller, which is basically right here. We have about here, we have contact us here. The first approach that we should follow is like we should create a separate function for each pages. All right, we should not create a one controller that handles everything, because that is not a quite professional way. The only professional way is to create separate controllers for each page. All right, so let's create another controller, and I will just copy that command and I will name it as about controller, like so. And you will see that we have the about controller here. Similarly, let's create a function here quickly, or let's copy this one without wasting our time, and we just name it as index and welcome to about. All right, and obviously we don't have any about file, so let's create an about file, and everything should remain the same. Let's rename this to about.blade.php. Okay, now let's point out this to about here. So remove this as we have done previously. About controller, class, and index method. If I reload the page and click on about page, you can see that we have now about controller. All right, and the URL also changes here. If I go back to home, we have still the welcome to the controller. All right, so this is basically the first way, one way of creating controllers. All right, where we have an empty controller and this contains nothing, and we create those functions by ourselves depending upon our need, what we really need from the controllers. There are two more ways, and we will discuss those in the upcoming videos.